Hello, folks. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Education Matters. My name's Deborah Olster, and today we have Patrice Benard with us, and she's going to clue us in with some more information, even more than she brought in that 3-minute comment period last week at the school board meeting, because we wanted her to have a little bit more time to bring us this important information about our standards in Manchester. Manchester academic standards are Common Core standards, and Patrice is going to help us along with this.
82% of the standards that I've reviewed are Common Core standards, word for word. That's what we have. Did you want to update us first on what was going on in the state this week?
At the Hollis Brookline Forum a couple weeks ago, or was it a week ago? A couple weeks ago, board chairman, state education board chairman Raffio, what's his first name?
Tom Raffio.
Tom Raffio explained to the folks there at the Pro Common Core Forum that Manchester academic standards are Common Core standards. So
correct.
Take it from there.
And to prove that, I actually have gotten the Common Core standards all printed out. It's a nice thick book, and I can show you word for word. They are Common Core standards for the most part. It's 18%. They have been imported from either Indiana or Dr. Stotsky. The couple, it says K team, so I'm assuming that meant the kindergarten team that was at these monthly meetings.
Right.
There's like 2 or 3 that they put into the kindergarten standards. But for the most part, they are Common Core standards, word for word.
I appreciate all your work that you've done on this. I mean, that testimony you gave at the school board was incredible, and it just goes to show that are they trying to pull the wool over our eyes?
I want to believe the best in people. I don't know if I can hold out hope much longer. I've only gotten through the preschool and the kindergarten standards.
I mean, there is an agenda here going on. There is an agenda.
They say that it's not curriculum. I'm going to show you in the standards how it is curriculum. Mm-hmm. I've printed out a copy for you of my comments and my testimony of the preschool and kindergarten standards. And Manchester did something very interesting. They put out preschool standards that say, we know 3-year-olds are making progress when we know 4-year-olds are making progress when and then they put kindergarten. And yet, when you go to the kindergarten standards rewritten that you can find on the Manchester School District website under Manchester Academic Standards from the homepage, and then you click on the draft template, and that will bring you up each grade level. When you get to these kindergarten standards, they're different than what shows up on the preschool standards. There's no consistency, folks. Sorry. So you're going to have to look back and forth, back and forth. So what happens is, when you look at these, if you see all the yellow I've got here on this page, everything that's in yellow says with prompting and support. When you do something with prompting and support, who is going to prompt? Who is going to support? I think we're talking about the teachers. So are we testing students' achievement? Are these standards are we hoping for students to achieve these standards? Or are we testing the teacher's support and the teacher's prompting? If a child needs prompting and support, then they have not mastered the standard. So are these standards really, or are these curriculum? Because if you need prompting and support, that's a teaching method. That's not a standard.
Right.
So with prompting and support happens 19 times in the kindergarten ELA standards. This is a problem. And there's no consistency. There's a lot of duplication of standards. They'll have to clean this up. I really wish the Manchester School District would hire a proofreader or a copy editor. Maybe none of your English teachers in high school seem to know how to proofread or copy. Maybe the Central High School teacher who spoke so eloquently when the standards were presented, maybe you would have her proofread these and check them for grammatical and spelling and duplication mistakes. You really need a good copy editor when you're going to put something out. Plus, this is how the preschool standards look, and the kindergarten standards look completely different. We need one single format. How can you compare and contrast when you don't have a standard format?
There was
This-
no intention to compare and contrast.
Oh, rats. Foiled again. But that my first objection is that the standards are not written for students to achieve. These are testing teachers, support, and prompting. Therefore, it's not a standard. Then we get to, in kindergarten, read emergent reader text with purpose and understanding. What is an emergent reader text? Are we talking about Hop on Pop or something else? They don't list that. I'm sure that's going to come in the curriculum guides, which
Right.
they'll be working on soon. I believe that reading is something that can only take place in the first grade. I think kindergarten, 5-year-olds are too young to read.
They're supposed to be learning their sounds and their letters.
They're
and-
supposed to be learning to print their uppercase and lowercase letters. They're supposed to learn the sounds, the common sounds. G has 2 sounds. It says G and J.
Are you
Will they
getting
learn both of them? I have fridge phonics. My son sings a little song. G says G, and G says J. Every letter makes a sound. G says G and J. So we learned that.
But that's phonics.
That's phonics. You're right.
I don't know if they're going
Oh.
to be teaching phonics.
You're right. We not only do we have new math, we have new language too, don't we?
Leslie University is going to be coming up and giving their input on what Manchester should be doing. We're going to be another experimental school, or experimental district. It's in the CNI agenda for tomorrow's meeting. Tomorrow is the 23rd.
Oh, this literacy
The
collaborative.
literacy, and the Leslie College or Leslie University is the one going to be in charge
Collaborating.
of making our school another experiment, or our district another experiment. This happened in Nashua several years ago.
Oh,
Leslie took over Emma Street School and made them an experimental school, and the teachers were not allowed to use phonics. No way, no how. And there were teachers that were reporting to me and letting me know that they were trying to sneak it in, because some of these ELL students, English language learning students, they had to have some phonics to get over the bridge, to make the gap, to get over the gap, make the bridge into the language of English, and they were not allowed. And they had,
Oh.
the monitors go around and make sure the teachers
Oh.
weren't using phonics or any materials. They couldn't have any materials that were phonics or phonetic. So it's all whole language, folks. And
Wow.
it doesn't do well.
well, and then one of the things, if we look at the preschool standards, it says recognize a few letters in their own name, especially the first letter. I'm sorry, but I teach my 3-year-olds how to spell their name. They should recognize every name of their,
Even
every
by,
letter of their name.
Even by rote,
But-
it's fine. Yeah.
In some ways, this is all moot. What is our preschool program in Manchester? It is a special ed developmental preschool, for the most
full
part.
day. Full day
No.
now, isn't it?
Well, I don't know.
They approve the
Oh.
full day kindergarten?
No, I'm talking about the preschool.
Oh, the preschool.
The preschool for 3-year-olds.
And that's full day too, I think.
It used to be 3 hours, 3 days a week. That's when my son attended the special ed preschool. He had a speech delay, so he attended Jewett Street, and he took the speech, the side-by-side classes. So they had half the class was developmentally disabled, and half the class was neurologically typical students. It's a great program. My son learned nothing because we had already been doing this at home, but I thought that it was a good preschool program. It went right along with what I was teaching him at home. 3-year-olds can learn every letter of their name if they are neurologically typical. There is no reason to recognize a few. Are we writing standards for the neurologically typical child, or are we writing standards for the special needs child? That's another issue. If you go through these standards for preschool and kindergarten, they tend to look like they are for a special needs child, a child with a deficit, a child who does need prompting and support. Children who are neurologically typical will not need the prompting and support of a teacher. They can and should be able to achieve standards on their own. So I have a question about that, about recognizing the letters of their name. By the end of kindergarten, we get into phonological awareness. Here's the difference. If you look in the pre-K standards where it lists the kindergarten standards, it says print many uppercase and lowercase letters. However, once you get to the kindergarten standards, the language is different. It says print uppercase and lowercase letters. Have we made a switch? Are we doing many letters? Are we doing all uppercase and lowercase letters? Truthfully, at the end of kindergarten, the student should be able to print all of their uppercase and lowercase letters. That's a no-brainer. If with only 3 hours a day, from 8 to 11, 5 days a week, the teachers should be able to teach them to print all of their uppercase and lowercase letters.
If we're supposed to make them proficient in reading by 3rd grade, if we're not setting the bar high enough, they're not going to make it.
Well, then there's setting the bar high and there's setting the bar too high. The very next standard is demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English capitalization, punctuation, and spelling when writing. Our children can barely print letters, and we're going to have them writing. Deb, really? What can 5-year-olds write? And are we going to bring out Strunk's standards of elements of writing? What are we going to do for 5-year-olds? What conventions of standard written English can they really comprehend?
So you don't give them the tools, and then you expect them to do something, and then you frustrate the child.
We're going to have them print many upper and lowercase letters, but we're going to have them use the proper standards of written English. What were they thinking? But then again, this is a Common Core standard. It's really not a Manchester standard at all. So I think this is a bit too much.
So when the children come home frustrated from kindergarten or preschool, and you know they don't really want to go to preschool anymore. I know there are parents that have taken them out and put them in private school because it just wasn't servicing the child. The child was angry, frustrated, sick to their stomach, didn't want to go to school.
Well, right. And what's one of the most famous preschool or early education methods out there? It's Montessori, isn't it? Everybody wants to get their kid into a Montessori school. Why? Because they learn through playing. And I was so thrilled. The teacher, Joanne Mulligan, I believe was her name, at the school board meeting said, children learn through playing. I think that the Manchester Developmental Preschool is a great preschool. I think they understand children. I know they get sensory processing disorder issues. I know they understand that children can't sit still. I know that it also does not extend into the upper grades. If we could take those preschool teachers who understand kids will be kids and bring them up into kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, so that the teachers could understand these kids can't sit still and be taught. They have to interact with things. We have to make it fun. They have to learn through singing. They learn through playing. They learn through story time. But they cannot sit at a desk, be quiet
lectured
for a half an hour at a time. It simply cannot be done. And boys will be boys. But remember, your kindergarten teachers know all about the rating scale, behavior rating scale that your pediatrician will hand you. They know how to fill those out so that your child can be coded as ADHD and can be put on drugs. I have 3 boys. I know that the teachers know how to fill this out. It's called the Connors Behavior Rating Scale. The teacher knows what she's doing so that she can get your child drugged. Because if they're on, now they don't use Ritalin anymore. They use all kinds of other things. But they will drug the child so that they will sit still and not interrupt classroom.
That's horrendous.
When the traditional child, the neurologically typical child, needs to get up and play. They need to move around. Can you imagine what's going to happen to full-day kindergarten? These boys are going to go crazy. Even the girls need to play. But you see it a lot more in boys. Boys are coded a lot more as having ADD or ADHD. But boys need to play. They need to exercise their muscles. Fine motor control that's required for writing can only be developed after the gross motor control takes place. Gross motor control is your large muscles. The boys need to go out, they need to swing by their arms on a monkey bar. They need to climb trees. They need to try to climb ropes. Boys need to play. Once the gross motor skills take place, then the fine motor skills required in the fingers for writing, then those can take place, but you have to go work from large to small. So I wish that the teachers would please let these children play, If you have to keep them inside and can't give them a recess, let them sweep the floor, let them wipe the whiteboard, or bang erasers from a chalkboard if you still have regular chalkboards. But let the children play. They must develop their gross motor skills before the fine motor skills can take place, can kick in and develop the skills necessary for writing and coloring. That's why the primary crayons are these big, blocky,
Big fat ones.
triangle ones, or they're big, fat ones, because they can't grasp
The small.
the small ones. So I really don't see how we're going to be writing in kindergarten. Then we have this fun one. Participate in collaborative conversations with diverse partners about kindergarten topics and texts with peers and adults in small and large groups. Well, collaborative conversations, that's an awfully fancy word. How about just participate in conversations about kindergarten topics and texts with peers and adults in small and large groups? But this collaborative conversations with diverse partners. At 5 years old, they're not really comfortable mixing it up with everyone. Some children are naturally more talkative. Some will take over. Collaborative conversation.
I mean, if it happens naturally, hey, I want that.
But
Or,
when with diverse partners,
Yeah.
do we really have
Carry
to
on
stay with diverse?
conversations.
Do we really have to force them to intermingle? Sometimes, especially at this young age, we should be allowing them to stay with their buddy. Should we really separate them? That's going to cause extra stress for a kindergarten child. A 5-year-old boy can't be stressed out. It will manifest itself at home in behavior issues, in eating issues.
Even bedwetting.
Yes, there are multiple problems. You'll start seeing girls chew down their nails, or even
stressed.
boys, or you'll see them
Eating their
gnaw
shirt.
on their shirt. These are all signs of stress. We already have a very high percentage of our children that are coded as having a disability. That includes nervous disorders.
And
That
now we have
includes anxiety.
psychologists in the schools, and we have psychological disorders being identified. Not only that, but the folks in New York, they were saying the Common Core syndrome is apparent
Right.
now in the schools.
I'm just worried about this collaboration. And we see it if I went to the teacher's channel on YouTube, and I see what they're talking about in the upper level classrooms. They literally break these kids down into groups of 2s or 3s, and they have them all scattered around the classroom. There is no order. They're working for 15 minutes collaborating on one problem. I could have them doing 6 problems in that same time, showing them the traditional method, but no, they have to collaborate.
Right, because the teacher's not a direct instructor anymore. She's
Right.
a facilitator.
And you know what? In college, when we did the Socratic method of learning, we sat around a table, and our teacher was referred to not as a professor or a teacher. He was called a tutor. He sat back and he said, "This is the chapter we read. What do you think?" And we started a discussion. And he would guide us gently with questions every now and then, just as Socrates did, to make sure we got the main points that we were supposed to get. He didn't lead. He let us discuss. I was 17 in
Right.
college.
And you have some background,
This
some
is-
life history.
Yes, this is 5-year-olds. I don't really think they should be left to collaborate. We also get into this: follow agreed upon rules for discussion. Have you heard of the inmates running the prison? Are we going to really let 5-year-olds set the rules for discussion? We send them to be taught. The teachers should be setting forth the conventional standard rules for discussion. The children don't know that. Some of them, many of them, especially in this day and age, are only children. They don't know how to interact with other children. They need to be taught. You have to take your turn. You have to wait. If you'd like to say something, raise your hand. They have to be taught the rules. They cannot agree upon the rules themselves. I'm sure the teachers, and I'm hoping that our teachers are smart enough to set the rules for
If
them.
we have some veteran teachers out there, we're depending on you to try to keep this somewhat cohesive.
When we get into expressive language, tell simple stories about times, places, or events in their own lives.
Telling. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Big time telling.
Yes.
Tell us everything about your family.
Yes,
Tell us
describe-
everything about you. How you feel. How you feel about things at home. Who's bothering you at home?
So you read that way too. Privacy rights and issues are something we adults are very familiar with. 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and 3-year-olds are not. They will obey the adult because they are told to obey adults. How dare they interfere? How dare they? Tell me about what you did last night. None of your business.
Where'd you go with your family?
What did you do on vacation? None of your business.
We've all had to write that paper.
Children should never.
What I've done on my summer vacation.
And they are mandatory reporters. How carefully are we screening our teachers? Do we even want our teachers to be put in that situation? I don't think they want to be put in that situation. And yet this is a standard they must achieve. They must tell simple stories about time, places, or events in their own lives. Really? Isn't that usually actually a teaching method? We want them to use descriptive language. Talk about your cat, talk about your dog, talk about your weekend, talk about what happened on the playground, talk about what happened in the lunchroom, talk about what we discussed this
But not so general about your lives.
We don't have to, but this puts it into writing, your lives.
Well, you have to know how to fill out all these surveys.
Well, now we get to speak using frequently occurring, or use frequently occurring nouns and verbs. Frequently occurring according to who? There are lists out there, folks. I know there are. There are lists of all these frequently occurring words. Give us which list you're using. I want to know what list you're using, because here again, we not saying that they're going to do something bad, but it's possible to sneak in more political correctness through these lists of commonly used nouns and verbs. Are we talking environmentalism? Are we talking global warming? That has been known to sneak in. So I would just like to see the lists that you're using. Tell me what lists. I'll Google it. I'll find it on the internet. But let me know.
You can reinforce at home the words.
Here's a funny one. Speak audibly and express thoughts, feelings, and ideas clearly. How do you speak if not audibly?
Speak up assertively is probably more what they mean.
How about speak clearly? They really
Clearly.
want them to, you want to be able to understand them. Speak clearly then. I think you chose the wrong word on this one. You can't speak if you're not, it's
Audibly.
not speaking if it's
Well,
not
what
audible.
decibel are we at right now?
I mean, really. Even a whisper is considered audible, so I think they just need to change this. But when we get to these nouns and verbs, are they going to use Schoolhouse Rock? That's part, that will come up, we'll see what the curriculum guide says. The curriculum guides, which we had a problem with last summer, I had a problem with last summer. Are they going to put Schoolhouse Rock on there? Hey, I've got no problem with that. They announce a person, place, or thing. You know, they teach that. But I would like to know what your frequent words are. Then we said, now this is where it gets funny too. When we go into the proper kindergarten standards, they do talk about learning prepositions, common prepositions. And I want to make sure I get, okay, literacy, LK1E. So the L stands for literacy, the K stands for kindergarten, 1 is the first standard. Common Core has all these standards, and then they delineate them as by 1E, 2E, 1A, B, C, D, E. So at 1E, use the most frequently occurring prepositions and pronouns. Catch the mistake. To, from, in, out, on, off, for, of, by, with, she, he. The only pronouns in there are she and he. But these are supposed to be prepositions. To, from, in, out, on, off, for, of, by, with. One of these things is not a preposition.
Like the other.
Which one? When did out become a preposition? Out is not a preposition, folks. You can go out of something. Of is the preposition. How do I know this? I've been diagramming sentences for the past 3 years.
Maybe they're
with my
putting a
children.
hyphen out of.
It's
out
not a
of
hyphen. That's
the
not a
house.
hyphenated word. Seriously. Who wrote these standards? That's what I want to know. I
Well,
want to
okay.
talk to these teachers.
And this is the thing, we got just 5 minutes left here.
You're
and
kidding.
And I'm saying, these standards, folks, have not been vetted, have not been certified. have not been validated. Dr. Stosky and Dr. James Milgram are the experts in standards
Standards writing.
standards writing in the country. Wrote the Massachusetts Academic Standards, which were the #1 standards in the country, and benchmarked with the rest of the world #1 in the top, 1 and 2, with Singapore and such. These standards, Manchester Academics, have not been vetted. And here we are, just accepting this, and we're supposed to have a public hearing on this, aren't we?
Oh, dear God. How did we get to only 5 minutes? I'm only
know.
through English. Let me just touch quickly on the math. Here's the problem. Represent addition and subtraction with objects, mental images, drawing, sounds, for example, claps, acting out situations, verbal explanations, expressions, or equations. I wrote down, gee, glad you threw an equation.
Or equations.
But it gets
This
worse.
is math, yes. Math is...
Math K0A, that's operations in algebraic thinking, point 2. Solve addition and subtraction word problems, and add and subtract within 10, for example, by using objects or drawings to represent the problem. There, they did not put in equations. It's only drawings and objects. This is why sites like crazy Common Core math problems exist on the internet. This is what people are complaining about. The other thing, compose and decompose numbers from 11 to 19 into tens, ones, etc., etc. This is curriculum, folks. This is a teaching method. This is not a standard. This is a teaching method. Where are the standards? They are talking about teaching methods. They're also inadequate. I have found, this is the book that I use with my own child. I homeschool him for kindergarten. I will have to homeschool him again for first grade. Now that I've seen the standards, they're not good enough. But I'm working to try to make sure that all of Manchester's children get the same education mine do.
So the students that have a private school education, this parochial school curriculum here,
This is a Catholic
there's
curriculum.
still going to be this gap. Okay, the parochial school children are still going to be 9 months to a year ahead of the public school kids,
Correct.
just as they've always been,
Correct.
and nothing's changed. So we still
Except
have
that
disparities.
they're dumbing it down.
They're dumbing it even more
I
down,
believe
yes.
that these are like special ed standards. I don't believe these are high, rigorous academic standards. In kindergarten, we are introduced to the ordinals. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, up through 10th. In my curriculum, there's no mention of ordinals on the Manchester academic standards.
Well, maybe they think these standards are too high, these parochial standards or private school standards. They're too high for public school kids.
That's not
Then, folks,
true.
if you have a smart child, then you ought to take him out of public school because he's going to be dumbed down. He'll never get ahead.
In kindergarten, I'm teaching my son about what is half of something. He's being introduced to fractions. It's not beyond his comprehension. It's certainly capable.
And we
But if-
use that kind of language during the days, you know.
Give me half of your apple.
Yeah,
Give me half
right.
of your sandwich.
It's in conversation.
Yes.
Now, we have 1 minute left, Patrice.
Oh.
Well, I think we need to say that there is a public hearing coming up.
Yes.
The mayor promised. Folks, I know, folks, you don't have time to go through the extensive research that maybe Patrice has done, but at least tell the mayor you're concerned about the dumbing down of the standards.
Even if you look at 1 or 2 pages of a standard for which you're familiar with, the standard your child is in, look at the grade level and try and see, is this good enough?
And come to the public hearing.
Please.
Come to the, well, I can't remember the date. It's in July. It's in July.
Oh, wonderful.
It's in July, when everyone's on vacation.
Yes.
And obviously you have a choice, folks. There's charter schools, and
there's homeschooling.
check them out and check up homeschooling as well. And these standards are not ready for prime time, as the mayor has said. All right, thank you, Patrice.
Thank you, Deb.
See you
Once
next
again,
time. You'll
yes.
come back with us,
I will
okay?
be back.
When the,
Yes.
I think we're off
when
the
we're
air.
doing
All right, take care. Bye.